Hi, I just want to record this quick video to show you our ICO research model. Um, this is the basic model, and I'm just going to run you through some of the metrics we're tracking. Obviously, the ICO names are grayed out here, but we basically look at a number of metrics, and that helps to decide whether the ICO is going to be a good investment and how much we should put into it, or whether we should pass on it. So, just going to run you through quickly some of these metrics and the weightings we put behind them. Um, Let me show you this tab, which covers some of this. So the way we score ICOs is first of all looking at the team, because obviously a lot of these projects are very speculative. So we want to understand who is the team behind this, what's their industry experience, what's their pedigree, have they successfully had startups before, have they had exits before, what's their experience, in this world in terms of blockchain, all these kind of things. So obviously we looked at their bios, we looked at their LinkedIn. We do our research on these people. We even get on the phone sometimes to do interviews with them to really qualify how strong are they and what is their ability to execute on their project, because they could have a really good idea, but if they're not able to execute, obviously that's going to be a concern to us. This part is probably the most important, because in ICOs are very, very early stage. They don't often have a working platform, so you really are leveraging the credibility of the team. And we also kind of look at the advisors. I'll talk about that in a minute, but the team is kind of the core part, and we give the highest weighting to that. So that's the first part we look at, and it makes about 22% at the moment. So we can tweak these weightings here. Obviously, as our research team talks about the formulas, we can obviously make this different to update our scores. The next one we're looking at is a prototype. And in terms of prototype, we try and break this down into a few different areas. So in terms of, is there any prototype at all? If not, obviously that gets a 0 from us. If they have a private prototype, that's sort of in very early beta, but it's not released, then we'll give it a score. Obviously, that's better than nothing. If it's peer reviewed, then that's even better, because it means it's had feedback from the community. So we give it extra points. If the beta is actually in public and people can use it, it gets even more points. And if it's something that's already operational, like a business that's already been running for a few years, they have a working platform, obviously that's the strongest. And really, this is going to tell you what is the delay to real world value creation, because when they get funding, how soon are they going to be able to actually apply that to build something that's going to return value to a token holder? So as an investor, this is really, really important. The next most important thing, basically, after the team. So this kind of tells us, how likely is it that we're going to have something in the next few months, or we're going to have to wait years basically to see a project to come to fruition. So the next one down is obviously really important as well. This is the market cap, or the hard cap. So this, once we've looked at the team, the prototype, and we kind of have a good feel for the project, we think it has potential, or it's got credibility at least, then we're trying to decide, should we invest in the ICO, or should we wait? Because a lot of the times, a lot of ICOs have good teams and good prototypes, but they're just overhyped. The company's trying to raise a lot of money. Essentially, they haven't delivered much value yet. And so there's so much premium built into the coin, into the project. And we don't really want to get in at that stage, because essentially it's just a software company with an idea and a smart team. So we're going to look at the hard cap. And the way we look at hard cap, we have our own metrics for what we think is undervalued and overvalued. In this market right now, anything around 20, 30, 40 million is pretty reasonable in our expectation, comparing to previous ICOs and the market at the moment. So we do model this against other successful ICOs in the past to see what is a good valuation. If it's over 50 or 70 or 100 million, we start to really step back, because at that point it's very hard to justify those valuations in the market when you haven't when you haven't been around very long, and comparing that to other ICOs in the space. So we're worried about value dilution, and that's something we'll look at very, very closely. So for a company to get top marks here, their hard cap would need to be around 30 million, not more than that. Obviously, we look at other metrics, but this is really, really important to know: are we skipping the ICO, or are we going to try and get in at the ICO stage? The next metric is the pre-sale cap, and we're trying to look at how much of the tokens are being sold in the pre-sale versus the crowd sale. Because again, if we're getting in to this ICO and we find out that a bunch of the coins have been sold to investors at pre-sale, maybe at very discounted rates, that means a lot of the capital is actually locked up at those prices. And what happens after the ICO is those people try and sell. And if there's too many investors locked in at that level and they're all selling, that's going to really suppress the price in terms of how the price performs after the ICO. So the way we look at this is we have kind of different barriers here. So 50% in pre-sale would basically be for us no extra brownie points really. We give it a 0. If it's 20 to 50%, we give it extra points. If it's 20% or less, even more. And if there's no pre-sale and everything is in the crowd sale, for us that's the strongest, because that means there's no people holding at earlier prices and nothing that can redump on the market. So that's the strongest score for us. So again, that's how we weight it. That's really, really important to decide. Obviously, if we're trying to get in the pre-sale, then that's it. We're not so worried about that. But if we can't get in the pre-sale, we want to at least know who's in the pre-sale, how much capital was locked up in those prices, at what prices. To know, are we buying in too late, essentially. We also look at the next one is community. So how strong is the engagement in the community? This is things like how many followers across either their largest platform, could be Slack, could be Telegram. If they have over 30,000 followers, like a Kyber, for example, that's super, super strong engagement. That means there's a lot of hype, a lot of awareness. People that can't buy in during the ICO for whatever reason will then have to buy afterwards. So this is something that really helps us determine how the price is going to perform afterwards. So this is more of a short-term metric, in terms of do we invest, how much do we invest? A project like Kyber, for example, because it had so many followers and so many people on the whitelist, that everyone could only buy a very small amount, and it meant that anyone who wanted to buy more would have to wait until after the ICO. So as an investor, that's really strong, setup for us. We're very bullish in those kind of projects, assuming it has a very strong team, strong prototype, all the other factors as well. But this really helps determine the short-term price action. Another thing is geographic potential. So what we score here is we're looking at the project to see what's the sort of reach of this project. Is it something that's a global project? Obviously, that's going to have more potential, so we would give it a higher rating. If it's something that's just operating nationally, but in a big country like China, we still give it a high score. If it's a smaller country like Estonia, obviously it's less relevant. We're not so interested. And actually, regional, we would give a higher score here. I think this is a typo we need to update. So basically based on what the reach of this project is, and obviously how much scale it has in the future. The next one, which is quite important, is the vesting lockup. So this is basically looking at, for the founders, when they get their tokens, what's happening? Are they able to sell straight away? Because if there's no vesting, that's a huge red flag for us. We won't invest in any project that doesn't vest their tokens. That just means they're probably not worried about creating long-term value creation. They're just trying to use the ICO to raise money to get rich, essentially. So how we score them here is, obviously, if there's no vesting, it's 0 points, and it's a red flag for the whole project. We probably won't invest at all. If the vesting is between 0 and 6 months, it's not great. So we give them less points. And if it's 12 months or more, in this market, that's very, very normal. So that's kind of, we'll give them an extra point for that. That's really, really important. This is probably, the number 1 or 2 things we'll look at before we even look at all these projects, all these metrics. The next one is the advisors. Advisors we score quite highly because typically the market will follow people who have big names like Vitalik, for example, or someone who has big credibility in the space. If they are backing a project like Charlie Lee, obviously that brings a lot more awareness to the project. There's a lot more chance that project will sell out and also have demand after the ICO. So advisors is something else that we'll look at to see how much buzz, how much awareness is in this project. The next one is individual cap. And again, this is something that's really important for us as investors, because if there's a cap on how much people can invest, it just means there's more restriction on the supply and more demand is pent up after the ICO. So if, for example, there's no whitelist or no cap, it's not going to get any points from us. If there's a whitelist and people actually have to be on that whitelist to invest in the ICO, that is a good sign for us. And if they have restrictions, for example, like a blacklist, and certain countries can't invest, that's even more. It's even stronger for us, because it basically means there's less people that can get in before the ICO, and those people again will have to buy afterwards. So this is kind of how we measure supply and demand for the initial token economics, for how the ICO is going to perform afterwards. The next one here is the percentage of total supply in the ICO. So we kind of rate this based on what percentage of tokens are being released in the crowd sale, because if there's not enough tokens being released, you need to understand what are the other tokens being used for. Sometimes a lot of it is being given to founders or advisors. So these are the other sort of metrics we look at to see, are they releasing a high enough percentage of the total supply? Again, we basically give that a graded weighting based on what we think are reasonable metrics. So that's how we kind of look at the space. The last one is the protocol layer. So if something is a protocol layer on top of which other applications can be built into, like a coin like Ethereum, for example, or like a District 0x, Obviously, that's going to have a lot more growth and potential. If it's just an app, it's not going to have obviously the same kind of scale. So that again is really important to us. We want to try and focus on protocol layer coins across all these metrics. We're really focusing especially on fintech projects because they tend to add liquidity to the whole market, especially their protocol layers like Kyber or 0x. Those type of projects to us are very, very exciting. So we do have some other metrics here. I'm not going to go into everything, but again, just some extra things we look at to see are there red flags in the project that should stop us from investing. And this kind of pie chart kind of explains to you, visually all the stuff I just explained to you. So obviously the team and the prototype is the most important when you're looking at ICOs. If you then look, obviously the market cap tells us is this potentially undervalued or overvalued? At this point, should we get in at the ICO or should we wait until afterwards to invest in this project? And then all these other metrics, make up, almost half as well. So they're very, very important metrics. We then plug those metrics and numbers into the spreadsheet here. So you can see everything gets a score, and we're then deciding which ones to negotiate for pre-sale or for investment. We'll approach these projects. We'll tell them what we think, if we like them. Is there anything that they can change to make it even more attractive? So we have actually helped some companies to structure their white papers and token economics to make it even more attractive for investors. Or if there's some red flags, are they open to fixing those problems so we can invest with them? So this is kind of really, really useful to filter out a bunch of projects that either are not good for investing in, or they just don't fit the right criteria, because you can't invest in all these ICOs. We don't want to really just invest in everything we think is good. We want to invest big in the sort of top 3 or top 5 ICOs, every month or every 2 months. So that's really our focus, is to just get rid of the 80-90% that's just not a good fit, even though they may still be a 7 out of 10, for example. But if it's not, the top level of what we're looking at, we're just going to focus on the ones that we think have the most potential and go biggest on those. So that's really how we weight it. We do basically also have a team that we're setting up to scout out these ICOs. So we have different roles, and this is something we can discuss with you, how we partner with you to basically do the research, because this is a very time-consuming operation. You need to have people that are trained, they know what to look for, they know how to do the filtering, and obviously able to go out to the market and save time by collaborating. So we have a big team that does that, shares all the research, and then we have a team behind that who kind of looks at the best deals, gets the metrics, does the analysis, and then passes that on to people who actually negotiate deals. So for example, if we were going to try and get a coin listed on Robinhood, we would be negotiating to see, okay, what can we do to get that coin on? If we think it meets all the criteria, it's a really solid project. What are they willing to concede to get that liquidity? Because it's very attractive. If you're an ICO and you're trying to get investment, it's very attractive to have a tie-up within a big exchange that can guarantee you liquidity to your investors, because that's the biggest challenge, is really how long it's going to take when your capital is locked up in these tokens before it actually goes on a major exchange. And that's when obviously the volume takes off and the price pops. So these are all kind of more strategic ways of doing ICOs, and there's a lot more going on. I'm happy to chat with you to explain some of the ideas we have around collaboration. But just for this ICO space, this research model has taken a lot of time. Obviously, it saves us a lot of time and obviously a lot of money we don't waste on bad projects, because we're able to catch them very, very early and not even have to invest in them. So these are the type of projects we'll be looking to bring onto the Robinhood exchange, and obviously getting in at an early level is beneficial for both of us. So hope this makes sense to you. Happy to chat if you have any questions, and we'll talk soon.